Right, we'll go ahead and get started. If you're just joining us, welcome to the Hudson River Watershed Alliance's breakfast webinar series. If you can introduce yourself in the chat, it's great to see who's with us this morning. Make sure that the box is clicked to go to everyone and not just the hosts and panelists. And if you want to share your name, affiliation, where you're zooming in from today, it's great to see folks from all around the watershed who are joining us in our virtual space today. My name is Emily Vale. I'm the Executive Director of the Hudson River Watershed Alliance. We're happy to offer this program with support from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, Hudson River Estuary Program, and NUIPIC. Thanks so much to our program sponsors. And a couple of quick announcements before we jump into the topic. So we have our upcoming program. The Wavemaker Awards benefit is on June 5th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the Falcon in Marlborough, New York. This is our annual celebration of the 2024 Watershed Wavemakers and all of the work that community volunteers do on behalf of our watershed. So I'm going to put a link in the chat with more information. We'd love to see you all in 3 dimensions at the Falcon if you're able to come. We also have a couple of different ticket options. If you're a student or volunteer, we have a base ticket price, so hopefully make that more accessible. And if price is a barrier, we also have a number of donated tickets from sponsors as well. So please don't hesitate to get in touch if you'd like to join us. The other announcement is that we've just wrapped up a really exciting watershed characterization process for the Punch Brook, Roloff, Jansenkill watershed in Columbia and Dutchess County. We worked with a great group of volunteers and local partners to put together this project that included compiling information, developing maps, and sharing the information out in a report. So I'll put the links in the chat here, both for the Wavemaker Awards benefit and our Watershed Characterization Technical Assistance project. We had many, many lessons learned as part of this pilot project, and we'll be developing a guidance document for watershed characterizations this summer and sharing it out this fall. We're really excited about that work. So by way of introduction for today's topic, Dr. Kate Meierdiercks from Siena College joined the watershed characterization team to support with some of the GIS mapping and helping out with some of the understanding of both the geographic information and also how to frame the watershed characterization report. And as we were working together on this process, shared some of the lessons learned from this project working in Oklahoma with the Tar Creek and the environmental justice issues there. So we wanted to bring Kate on to share out some of those lessons learned a little bit more broadly because they were so valuable to us as part of this project and thought it might be valuable to you all as well. So just a quick little bit of housekeeping. We are recording this session. We'll be posting it on the Hudson River Watershed Alliance's YouTube channel and sharing it with anyone who registered. So feel free to share it with folks that couldn't join us today. If you have questions, we'll take them at the end. You can use the Q&A box to ask those questions. That'll help us keep track of them during the presentation. And with that, I'll hand it over to Kate.
Great, thank you, Emily. Just share my screen here. Okay, and maybe I'll just ask for a thumbs up that you can see the presentation. Okay, cool, awesome. So thanks for that introduction, Emily. What I wanted to share with all of you today is some of the things that I had learned, as Emily mentioned, working with lead agency and Rebecca Jim, who's on the Zoom call today, as we built a flood map for their work out in Oklahoma. And as I was working on this project and also thinking about the work that I do, but a lot of us are doing here in the Hudson Valley, community engaged research, participatory research, building academic community partnerships. I've been really thinking about how to make this work more equitable and make sure that we're building capacity and for watershed work in ways that empower community groups. And as I said, this is a question that I've been thinking about, so I wanted to share some of these ideas and lessons learned with this group. So just a quick overview of the project. So as I mentioned, I I worked with Lead Agency out in Oklahoma. It's a LEAD is a grassroots environmental justice organization dedicated to ensuring the health and safety of people living in Miami, Oklahoma, and the surrounding areas in Ottawa County. And so how did I get paired with Lead Agency in Oklahoma? Well, I had volunteered as a community scientist with American Geophysical's Thriving Earth Exchange. So they're the ones that paired me based on my expertise with Lead Agency, who had a need for a flood map. Thriving Earth Exchange supports community science by helping communities find resources, project managers, and experts to address their pressing concerns. And over about a 2.5-year period, we worked together to build a flood map. The map demonstrates how toxic floodwaters flow through the Tar Creek Superfund site, potentially contaminating the community. And this is further exacerbating historic and modern day environmental racism. What I think is really cool about the project is not only how we work together to build the map, but in all the amazing ways that Lead Agency has been able to use the map to support their work in Ottawa County, using it for storytelling, finding and telling stories, their environmental justice, education, outreach, and activism work. And so here is the map. I wanted to share it with you right off the bat in case you wanted to click on the link and play around with it. I won't be offended if you play around and explore the map as I talk. That's perfectly okay. The QR code, I believe, should work with your phone. If not, maybe Emily wouldn't mind putting the link into the chat. And so go ahead and play around with that. And if you do get distracted and just want to play with the map for the next hour, that's totally okay. I'll give you my main point right now, so you don't have to wait until the end. And so here's the main point of this presentation. So as I mentioned, I've been thinking about this question: can academic community partnerships be equitable? And I think what I've come to understand, and what Lead Agency has helped me realize, is that yes, these partnerships can be equitable, but it really matters how you think about equity and the goals and the scope of the project. So when I started this project, I really had a limited view of what the goals were. I thought the goal was to create a map. And I realized this is a very sort of scientific way of thinking about it, right? The goal is to create this tool. And, in this case, it's a map, but it could also be a data set or a report or some sort of art installation. And so I really thought that that was the goal. And in that context, no, the project wasn't equitable. I was the one that had the GIS expertise. I was the one that made the map and had a lot of the decision-making power in creating that map. Yes, I definitely sought feedback from the community, but it was mostly my responsibility to make the map. And in that context, I was thinking, well, no, this project is not equitable. But it was really Lead Agency who helped me understand that, the goal of the project was not just to create a map. It was to create a map and then use it for their activism and education work. And so in the larger context, production without action is just an unfinished project. And all of the team members had responsibility to make sure that the map was actually useful to the community and advance their work. And so I've come to think about this, that in terms of this question, is this work equitable? And I recognize that power, technical expertise, resources, and capacity may never be equitable across teams of academic researchers and community partners. Funders, researchers will just have more resources many times than our community partners. But when the goals of the project are carefully co-developed and the expertise of the community partners are valued and uplifted, then those partnerships can lead to equitably co-produced outcomes. And it's important, I think, to really recognize that every team member brings in specialized knowledge. It's not just a map-making project. The community group has a really specialized knowledge of local needs and local context that then needs to inform the map. And so through this project, my thinking about academic community partnerships has really evolved. I used to think about power and decision-making, the balance between power and decision-making between the academic and community partners really falling somewhere along a spectrum. I think a lot of us think about it like that, where, on one end of the spectrum, science is meant to inform the community, whereas we're really trying to move along towards this right-hand side of the spectrum to empower the community. That's the idea. That's the ideal. And what I thought that meant was that I needed to cede some of my power, decision-making power, to the group. And working with lead agency and learning from Rebecca and Martin, but I've really come to think about it is it's a little bit more nuanced than that. It's not so black and white or falling somewhere along this grayscale, but that each member brings in some specialized expertise, some specialized knowledge in the form of capital. And it's really important for each member to invest their capital into the project and into the community. So I bring some technical expertise, and it's really important that sometimes I lean into that expertise and invest it in the project. But Rebecca, Martin, they also bring some specialized knowledge that then needs to get invested into the project. And so this has really kind of helped me think about what my role could be in these academic community partnerships. So here is the project team. I worked with Rebecca Jim, Martin Lively, Earl Hatley from lead agency. Jessica Tran was our Thriving Earth Exchange Community Fellow. She worked to organize the group and keep us on track. We also had some partners. Jim Coopers was an engineer that worked on the project with us, and then some great support from the Anthropocene Alliance. And so I am going to pause there because Rebecca joined us on the Zoom this morning, and so I wanted to just let her say a few words.
Yes, hello. I will tell you only a few words and how important this partnership has been for our community. What Kate did really has empowered us as an organization, but has uplifted our citizens to be able to find ways to speak up and really bring their messages to federal agencies who have the sway to help us. So at a Superfund site where citizens have so little power, but the Superfund site's main named waterway is poisoning us, and then poisoning the lake the water goes into. All of that couldn't be seen until this map was developed. It was an eye-opener. I remember sitting with the floodplain manager when he first saw the map, and he was shocked at all of the homes that are underwater when we have a flood. And when we add each of those layers in, more and more people we understand are impacted. And so we have used this map to tell our story to every federal agency and state agency that we can, to elevate our issues and help us find hope through them. So thank you, Kate. And I could go on and on because each layer was a story, why we added it and why we needed it, and that we could then see who had the groundwater wells we needed to go find to talk to, who do we need to talk to in the floodplain, how far away do we need to reach, and we have to go far. So thank you again. it's a powerful tool.
Thank you, Rebecca. And thanks for getting up early to join us. It's a little earlier in Oklahoma right now. Appreciate that. And Rebecca may stay around to the end for some Q&A as well. So
Thank you.
yeah. All right. So that was the quick overview. I'll go into a little bit more details. First, I just wanted to provide some background on Ottawa County out in Oklahoma and the Tar Creek Superfund site. So the Tar Creek Superfund site was designated as a Superfund site in 1983. It's located on Quapaw tribal land, and Ottawa County is home to 10 federally recognized tribal nations. The Superfund site is part of this larger, almost 2,500 square mile tri-state mining district that covers Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri. And these mines were in operation for over 100 years, and they produced over 400 million tons of crude ore. And so that mining waste was brought to the surface during that time and left on the surface of the earth in these huge hill-like formations, which are locally called chat piles. Some are as tall as 200 feet. I mean, they're just giant formations, and they contain some pretty nasty stuff. They're contaminated with lead, zinc, arsenic, cadmium, and manganese. And you can see, right, they're right in these communities. And so as a result of the mine, there's lots of environmental and health impacts in Ottawa County. So in addition to the chat piles, the soil in the region is contaminated. Those mine shafts fill up with groundwater, which causes acid mining waste, which is discharged into the environment. It contaminates surface and drinking waters. In addition, there's the landscape is packed with these sinkholes as the mining shafts collapse, and actually because of these sinkholes and the prevalent lead poisoning in the vicinity of the Superfund site, 2 towns had to be relocated, and the mining waste also contaminates local flora and fauna, including species that are used for food. And so for a while, these chat piles were just left out in the open. And although they contain toxic metals, for decades, community members, particularly children, used to play in these chat piles. The chat piles were used as fill in homes, driveway fill. They were used in housing foundations and even in some cases in children's sandboxes. And so because of the work like organizations like Lead Agency, people now know that this chat is toxic, but still today, that chat can get transported through the community. It's very fine grained, so it gets transported by wind and also through runoff. And so here's a picture from that Politico took of one of the chat piles, and you can see how when it rains, these chat piles erode and flow right into the Tar Creek, which is in the background there. It's windy in Oklahoma, as we know. There are tornadoes in the region, and so not only does this chat get transported just from regular wind activity, but when there's a tornado, a lot of the chat is picked up and distributed again throughout the community. And so although the EPA is working to clean up these chat piles, it's not happening fast enough. There's still lots of ways that the chat can contaminate the community. And so that's where Lead Agency comes in. So they were formed in 1997 in response to the health and environmental risk caused by the Superfund site. They're a grassroots community-led environmental justice organization. They strive to provide a voice for those who have been silenced and to bring justice to those who have been disproportionately impacted by environmental pollution. So they work to organize a citizen response toward cleanup and restoration of the Superfund site through education, outreach, litigation, particularly when local and federal government's response to the public health crisis and the magnitude and pace of their remediation efforts is far too inadequate. And lead agency runs lots of wonderful programs, such as a youth activist camp and toxic tours. They work to help the community build agency and empowerment towards justice. And recently, they have been focusing efforts around flooding in the county. And that's where the flood map came in. So how does Rebecca and her team do this work? They have a really excellent website, quarterly newsletter where they share science and stories with the community. Rebecca writes frequent blog posts about this work and lots of updates to share with the community through the website. Lots of work mobilizing youth. And so I mentioned there's the summer camp for youth. And recently working on educating and advocating for flood mitigation, flood response. And so with climate change, these big floods have become more and more common in Ottawa County. And so that is part of the reason, because of this recent flooding, part of the reason why I was paired through the Thriving Earth Exchange with lead agency. Oh, and I'll mention the flooding. So the community has had several of these really, really large floods in the last few decades. And there's a local dam where there's been talk of raising the level in the dam, which could further exacerbate this flooding. And not only is flooding an issue, but when it floods, the Superfund site also floods. And so these floodwaters can potentially pick up all of that sediment from the chat piles and redistribute it through the community. So that's how I was trying to help out with the flood map project. And so the goal of the project was to create an interactive map, support lead agencies, flood education, outreach, and activism work. And so the actual process of making the map was, in my mind, pretty standard. It wasn't too dissimilar from other work that I had done, mapping projects with the community, where the first step is to inventory what GIS data is available for the region. Based on the available data, we redefine project goals based, again, on this data, and then also the project team's expertise. So originally we had wanted to do a flood modeling study, but there wasn't the right data to do that. So we shifted gears a little bit. I drafted the map and shared it with the project team for feedback. Then we shared the draft map with stakeholders in the community and got feedback from them. So again, not so dissimilar from work that I had done in the past, a similar process to the watershed characterization work that we're doing with Emily Vale and the Watershed Alliance. Because this was a web map and not every community member has access to the internet, we also created PDF versions of the map to share with the community through thumb drives. Siena students were involved in this project in a couple of different ways, a few different ways. Early on in the project, I had a student help me inventory what data was available. This was particularly important because I've been working in New York for a while, so I pretty much know what GIS data are available in New York, but I had no idea what was available for Oklahoma or where it was located or who I needed to talk to get those data. So a student helped me with that piece. I also had a student put together a recorded map tutorial to help people understand how to navigate the map. A few students worked on creating story maps related to using the map as part of their story maps. And then once this map was created, lead agency was really able to use the map in some really novel and creative and effective ways that I had never even thought about, and beyond its original purpose. So more on that to come. And so, as Rebecca mentioned, one of the powerful things about this project and the fact that it was iterative, that we worked together to think about what should be included in the map and how it should look, is that as we were building the map, lead agency and the community was really able to find different stories within the map layers. So the original goal of the map was to create this floodplain map for the city of Miami, and kind of focus on the center of the community, specifically in that city of Miami. But the nature of the GIS layers in Ottawa County or in Oklahoma is that it was actually easier to create the map for the entire county, not just a single city. So to create a single city would have actually been more work than just to create the whole county. So I did the easy thing and just made a map of all of Ottawa County. And so what that meant is that although we were originally kind of focusing on the city of Miami, the map actually extended more north towards the Superfund site. So this was not the original purpose, to show the Superfund site. But again, as Rebecca mentioned, once you did that, it just became, the story just popped out that, okay, not only are these floodwaters impacting the downstream city, but look, they're flowing through the Superfund site and flowing over and through these chat piles. So these little white polygons, white circle-ish features here, those are the chat piles in Ottawa County. And so when it floods, these floodwaters flow through the Superfund site, pick up that toxic chat, and then distribute it through the community as the floodwaters recede. So this was a really, really powerful message that the map was able to help tell. And the other important piece of this is that there has been a lot of work in the community to remediate these residential yards that have this toxic sediment in them. So the Oklahoma DEQ has been digging up residential lawns and filling them with cleaner soil. But when it floods, those previously remediated lawns can just get recontaminated with toxic floodwaters. So that was another important story that lead agency was able to help tell with the support, or to tell with support from the map. Another really cool thing I think about how the community used the map was that community members were also able to find and tell their own stories using the map. So Gina Manders is a local resident. She wasn't directly involved in the project, but we shared the draft map with her, and she was able to add this information about this data about a proposed high density housing development. And she was able to show that the housing development was going to be in the floodplain, and use that to advocate for safer building practices. So the point here is that, as we were building the map was not completed, but as we were building the map, it was constantly evolving as we were discovering new stories in the map. At some point, it was somewhat final. So we wanted to, Rebecca wanted to share it with the community. And so that was done through their annual conference, the Chart Creek conference. So lead agency shared the web version of the map at the conference, and also PDF versions on these little thumb drives. It was also featured on the conference program here. So you can see the picture of folks holding up their conference program and with the map. And then it was also a feature on the conference's t-shirt. So here we shared it with the community. Rebecca shared it with the community. And then also was able to use it as part of a flood survey. So as I mentioned, one of the original purposes of this project was to create this map to support a flood survey, because not only are residents living in the floodplain in Miami, but if the level of the water behind the dam is increased, the upstream dam, then that flooding could just be exacerbated. And so this web map was used in engagement and education with the community. Lead agency asked folks in the community, do you know that you live in a floodplain? And asked the community to tell them how they feel, and then also tell local decision makers how they felt, and helped the community's voice be heard, and how they could be impacted, how they are currently and could further be impacted by flooding in the county. And so part of that work is not only education and outreach, but activism. So lead agency was able to use the map for their activism work as well. It was printed on postcards for a postcard writing campaign, and used in other ways in the community. And so, as I mentioned, I learned a lot about how tools like a GIS map could be used by a community for their education, outreach, activism work. And so this really helped me think more deeply about academic community partnerships and what it means for co-production to be equitable. And so here's where I want to share some of those lessons learned, particularly about academic community partnerships. So I've been working in the Hudson Valley region for 15 years now, working on community engaged, participatory research, building academic community partnerships. And I was still able to learn a lot from working with lead agency. So here are some of the things that that I thought I knew, because a lot of this is community science 101. But throughout the project, I realized that I still had a lot to learn. So one of the things that I wish I had done better was early on in the project to learn as much about the community as possible. So I did some work looking at lead agency's website, reading Rebecca's blog, reading the newsletter. But what I had not realized was that there's so much academic literature on the Tar Creek Superfund site. I wish I had really dug into that a little bit more deeply. One of the problems that I had early on was when I was trying to learn about the Tar Creek Superfund site is that I didn't always trust what I read. And so what I should have done was really focus on reading the academic literature, reading the stuff that you find on the internet that was endorsed or co-authored by lead agency. I didn't realize that until a little bit later on. I did, at some point in the project, I did ask Martin or Rebecca, what should I know? What are some things that I should read or I should watch? But I should have done a little bit more work early on to find those resources on my own. The other thing that I tried to do was brush up on best practices for doing research in the community. Two resources that I read that were really helpful, two books, Replanting Cultures and Decolonizing Methodologies. I think it's important to keep in mind that the academic community's understanding of working with Indigenous communities, BIPOC communities, international communities, is that our understanding of how to do it well and not so well is continuously evolving. So even if you have looked and read some of these resources in the past, it helps to brush up. I wish I had done a site visit earlier and asked, Rebecca gave me my own toxic tour. I didn't do that until a little bit, until late into the project because of caregiving responsibilities, and also because it was during the pandemic, but I should have done that right away, because seeing those chat piles, seeing those sinkholes really helped the message sink in, and the importance of lead agencies' work. I tried to be honest and transparent about my capabilities and capacity. I tried not to overpromise and underdeliver. I was also tried to be honest and transparent about why I was involved in the project, that I was involved in the project because I wanted to learn how to do this work well, to bring those lessons back to the Hudson Valley. But also I wanted to learn from lead agency and the work that they're doing. And also because it was helpful in my career. I was able to share this as a case study in my courses, write about it. And then the other thing that I really tried to do was being mindful of savior science, or sometimes it's called parachute science or helicopter science. This is where researchers swoop into a community and solve a public health or environmental crisis by sidelining local voices without asking the community, what do you need? So I really tried to do my best to elevate local voices and always ask the community what they needed. But I know I didn't always get it right, but I tried to ask questions and apologize when I knew that I screwed up. I'm sure I screwed up lots of times and didn't even know it. And I also tried to really think about this question of, can these partnerships be equitable, or how are they equitable? And as I mentioned at the top, in my work doing community engaged work, I really always thought about it as this work is falling on the spectrum, and really wanting to not just, when I do science, try not to just inform the community or consult with the community on a project, but work with the community in ways where they are empowered or can lead the work. And so when we think about this on the ladder of co-production, right, I'm not doing science to a community or even doing science for a community. The goal is always to do work with a community. And so I thought that, or I knew that was the goal, right? To move the project on towards the right end of that spectrum, or the top rung of the ladder. And what I thought I needed to do, because I had read this, is that in order to move towards those ends of the spectrum, or that height of the ladder, that academic researchers, funders, they need to cede their power. They need to give up their power to the community group in order to reach that ideal. And so I really brought that mindset into creation of the map. And so what I thought co-producing a community flood map would mean is that, we would co-produce the goals and information to include in the map, right? We would work together. I'd ask the community, what do you want? What do you want to see in this map? I would receive feedback and incorporate it into the map, going through multiple rounds of editing. And then at the end of the project, so the community is empowered, I would give the map to the community and work with a local partner who did have some GIS expertise to then maintain the map. So, as new layers are published, or as different layers become obsolete, right? There's someone has to do that maintenance, and that web map has to sit on somebody's servers. So I thought I would transfer the map from Siena's servers to the local community, but this did not work for a whole host of reasons: capacity constraints, technical constraints. Esri does not make this easy, and as a result, the effort for co-producing the map ended up using up valuable time and resources. So instead of empowering the community by handing over this map, I just ended up sucking up all this time and resources that should have been spent on the map. And so I was really trying to reconcile this my perceived need for lead agency to own the map. I thought that this was the goal, that they should have the map, but recognizing that, again, this was really sucking up energy and capacity. And then as I was having this kind of crisis of faith here, what do I do? I went to the Watershed Alliance DEIJ conference and sat in on a workshop facilitated by Good Work Institute on exactly this thing. And you can see here's a picture from the conference, and I'm sitting here just enthralled by this conversation because it really helped me resolve some of these tensions that I was having. And so, the message from that workshop is that, there will be power imbalances in collaborations, in partnerships. And the important thing is to recognize this, to not try to manage away these imbalances. And when you ignore that there's these power imbalances or resource imbalances or expertise imbalances, it can actually exacerbate these imbalances rather than help. And so this was in my case, right? I tried to say, no, you can maintain the map, but it just ended up sucking up resources. And instead of thinking about the goal to hand over this map, instead really consider the expertise that all team members bring to the project, and think of all of these as capital or currency that all team members can contribute that would lead to a successful project. So rather than always ceding power, there are times to lean into that expertise when it can help the community and invest that capital into the project and community. And so what I should have done is, rather than saying, you need to own the map, lead agency, why don't I lean into that expertise? It's not too much of a heavy lift for me to continue to maintain the map. I can even do it with a student. That is my area of expertise. Why don't I lean into that role, take on that role, so it opens up additional time and capacity for you to do what you're good at. The other thing that kind of helped me understand this dynamic, this power dynamic, and partnerships in academic community work is that everybody brings this specialized knowledge or specialized expertise. So again, if I can make a good map, then I should probably use what time and resources I have, because it is also limited, to make a really good map. But also the goal is not just make a really good map, but it's to make it in a way that's going to be useful to lead agency and their work. And so again, this idea that academic partners, so lead agency helped me understand this, that when working on these projects, the academic partners, including myself, tend to think of the goal of these projects is to create some product. So in my case, it was a map, but it could be a data set, a report, an art installation. But that's not the purpose of the project. The purpose is to create this tool and to use it in effective ways. So to lead production without activism is simply an unfinished product. So the project is not done when the tool is created. The project may never be done, but the project is sort of done when that tool is created and then used by the community. And understanding how to best use that tool, that is specialized knowledge, specialized expertise. Just like GIS expertise, the community member really knows how that tool can and should be used within the community. And so that specialized knowledge absolutely needs to inform the design of the tool. And then when the full range of specialized roles and knowledge is integrated within the shared understanding of the project scope, then there may be benefit to team members leaning into those roles. So maybe you don't want to share responsibility across all team members for each part of the project. Really understand that folks may need to lean into their expertise, but then invest that work into those shared outcomes. And then what that means is that everybody shares in responsibility and praise for successful community outcomes. And this book that Emily Vail recommended, Citizens, Experts in the Environment, really helped me think about this idea of specialized expertise, that community partners are experts in local knowledge and context. And then that needs to inform the tool, just like it needs to inform political decision-making policy, which is the thesis of the book. And it also helped me kind of rethink about who owns the map, right? So I kind of thought of well, I don't want Siena to own the map. I don't want the map to sit on the Siena servers, but in a lot of ways that will lead to more successful outcomes. So for example, why don't I lean into this idea that Siena has some specialized software and we have access to technical data to create the map. So let's create a map with those specialized tools, with those technical data. And in the case of this project, it actually led to more, in some cases, successful outcomes. So when lead agency was able to present the map to local decision makers, including county government officials and the EPA, they had been talking about this flooding before, but when those local decision makers were able to see the map and see that it was created with these technical resources, it gave, their words had more impact. So it provided some legitimacy for this, for a lived experience. And then, so the map was helpful in that context, talking to those stakeholders. But although the ownership of the map, we were not able to transfer it to lead agency, they were then able to essentially co-opt the map, right? So it was useful in some contexts as this digital web map with technical tools, but then they were able to co-opt the map through the PDF versions, screen captures, and printout versions to do their activism work. So in that way, they took ownership of the image of the map and its message. So there's different ways to own the message of the map and essentially own the message of the map. Okay. So in sum, these are some of the things that I learned through this project that have been helpful as now I continue to do community engaged work here in the Hudson Valley. So even if you're an ally who has, quote, done their research, I think it's really helpful to enter into the project with humility and a growth mindset. There's always more to learn. A science or academic tool, a map, a data set, technical report, installation can have many different purposes. It was really important for the project to be able to evolve and allow opportunities for the community to explore the story that the tool can help tell. For the project, it was also helpful to think about what type of specialized expertise or capital may be needed. If the team does not have or can't get the expertise or even the capacity to do a certain part of the project, then maybe it makes sense to adjust project goals or bring in a team member who has that expertise. Acknowledge power imbalances and lean into and leverage those imbalances when it serves the project and the community. But really thinking about, if you have some power in the project, think about converting it to capital that is invested in the project, in the community. Make sure that it's building capacity or empowering the community rather than sucking up energy and capacity. Technical tools like a web map can build legitimacy for local knowledge, but that local knowledge must inform how the tool is built. The academic partner is not done once the tool is created. Every team member has a responsibility to ensure successful project outcomes. And so, as Emily mentioned, I've been really thinking about this work that I had been doing with lead agency and how it can inform this watershed characterization project that we're working on now in the Hudson Valley. And so, I'm thinking about it in the context of this watershed characterization, but I can also see how these lessons might apply to a monitoring project, a water quality monitoring project that I'm working on in the Chromacilla or the Patroon Creek watershed. But watershed characterization. So it's the first step of the watershed management in developing a watershed management plan. And as Emily says, watershed characterization is hard. This is a hard thing to characterize a watershed. It's not just about putting a bunch of GIS layers together on a screen and clipping the boundary of the watershed. And so I've really come to think about this is that it can't be completed by a GIS professional alone, right? That local knowledge has to inform the tool. That local knowledge has to inform what those GIS maps look like and what form they're in, what data to include. But it also can't be completed by a watershed group alone. I mean, there is technical expertise that's needed to create these maps, and each member needs to bring their specialized knowledge and work together to build a successful watershed characterization. And each of that type of knowledge needs to be valued in this partnership. And an organization like the Watershed Alliance also brings their own specialized knowledge of the topic. They can help the community and the GIS professionals develop shared goals and a shared understanding of what success is going to look like. The important thing is that the science partner isn't done when the map or the monitoring data set or the science paper is completed. It's if you're working on this watershed characterization project, it's not like you make the maps, hand them over, and then you're done. No more responsibility. Each team member has a responsibility to ensure the tool is used by and for the community. And Emily's been talking about this, that a lot of times what happens with a watershed group is because watershed characterization is so hard, and it does take a lot of energy to do these maps. A lot of times what happens is that a lot of this energy is used up in the watershed characterization process, and then there's no energy left to actually do the planning and management. And one reason is, again, because this work is hard, but I wonder, this is my hypothesis for this group, is I wonder if it's also because there's a misalignment of the expertise with the work, right? So we're asking GIS professionals to know what a watershed group wants to see in a map, but we're also asking a watershed group to know what's possible with GIS and to know what GIS layers are out there. And so, it's part of that burnout due to kind of the misalignment of that expertise with the work. And, I don't know, but that's another question that I'm going to be thinking about. Okay, so that's the presentation. If you're interested and want to learn more, we published an article on this project in Esri, the Esri online newsletter, Esri ArcWatch. We're also working on an academic paper with some of these lessons learned for the Community Science Journal. It's in a draft form, but if folks are interested in seeing it, I'd be happy to share the draft version. I also encourage everybody to support lead agency. I mean, really, they are doing such amazing work, and your support does have a big impact. So there's a donate page. You can also make a donation to their youth activism camp, activist camp that's running this summer. Rebecca has highlighted a new documentary that's out. So I encourage folks to take a look at the trailer and try to catch the documentary when they can. And finally, if you're interested in working on a project like this, I recommend that you apply to the AGU as either a community group that has a project, a community scientist that can help with a project, or you can apply to serve as a community fellow. And so that's the person, that's the Jessica who helps bring the community group and the community scientists together and keep us on track. Okay, and so that is it for me. I will stop sharing. And
thank you so much, Kate, for that wonderful presentation. I took a ton of notes. Hope you all found it valuable as well. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us from Oklahoma this morning. I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions, if anyone has any. Okay, great. No, thank you to Kate for being thoughtful and reflective about the role of power and expertise in this project. And a question for Rebecca about how, from your perspective, how you saw this play out.
Well, it was, I would almost call it magic. But it was a process that it unfolded. And it seemed as if we discovered it together, and the power that it could have we're still discovering that. I can't tell you how it felt to be part of a team and really feel like we were part of it. This was a different experience. I've been associated with other research projects in the past, but this one was our project. And Kate did give us the keys as much as she could. And a couple of things have happened since that she didn't know about. So I will tell you real quickly. We captured some more snapshots from the map, and we're able to work with Gina and another young woman who used the data from our flood survey to illustrate layers of risk that our residents have and show that in a private setting with EPA in the last month. So it's very interesting to know that this project is going to impact us and our community in multiple ways. The postcards you saw were written to FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, who regulates the license that operates the hydro dam that backs up and floods us. And we believe that FERC is paying attention because we have flooded them with these postcards, with the images from this place and what's happening here. And over and over again, this is part of our lives now. And each of our community members that clicks on there for the first time feels and can find their house and find their own name on their property. So it becomes very personal, and they find their neighbors and they find out who else is at risk and how else they can talk to them. So yeah, you have seen a marvelous presentation, and I challenge any of you in this watershed to figure out how do you do this work deeply there, and engage your community members. And you're probably a community member yourself there. Mm-hmm. Take the reins and see what you can do that makes the lives of your neighbors better.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I want to acknowledge that we're at the 9:30 mark, but I did want to take one more question if we have time here. Asking what tips you have for a small grassroots organization that's trying to navigate an academic partnership. I think specifically, Rebecca, if you have any advice. This particular group is surprised by a lack of communication and don't really feel like it's a partnership.
Yeah, I've been on that road too. And what I've learned from this is to have some heart-to-hearts, and I'm thinking about several previous research projects, and what made the turn with those relations better was when we began to speak one to one, and 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 I didn't think that was possible because I always thought of those folks as way above us. But we can sit down together and we can see eye to eye. And I think we have to over and over again ask that to happen. Research doesn't have to happen in your community. It can happen with your community.
I think that's the perfect message to end on. I know we've got a couple more questions in here that we didn't get a chance to answer, but I'll share those with our presenters and see if we can follow up with you all over email. Thank you again so much for everyone for participating in today's breakfast webinar. Thank you to Kate and Rebecca for joining us and presenting about this incredible project. So many lessons learned, lots of insights that I think we can all apply to different areas of watershed work. So thank you so much again. Hope to see many of you at the Wavemaker Awards benefit on June 5th, and looking forward to staying in touch. Have a great day.